Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Regina Huber. As the former and CEO of her coaching and training business, Transform Your Performance, Regina drives transformational leadership and helps impact-driven career women increase their income, influence, and impact. Her eclectic experience on 5 continents, which includes management positions at BCG and ownership of businesses in 3 different countries, has shaped her into a multicultural transformational leadership coach, international inspirational speaker, and the author of the book Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine, as well as her signature framework, Powerful Leadership Transformation. She is also a contributing author to the book Mentors, Collective Lessons for Success. Welcome to the podcast, Regina.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for having me on today. It's such a pleasure to see you and to chat with you.
Well,
I was
thank
really
you.
looking forward to this.
Yes, and I was looking over the bio and the information you sent me, and you've had quite an adventurous life, it seems.
I have, you could say that. Yes. So, my path and also even my professional path has pretty much been driven by curiosity and adventure. And curiosity also happens to be one of my top leadership traits, as I found out through a leadership trait test in the past. So this insatiable curiosity really pushed me out into the world, despite my very extreme shyness as a little girl. And I was probably the shyest kid in the entire village. I grew up in a tiny little village on a farm. But this curiosity and my adventurous spirit, which I probably inherited from my dad, and also some mysterious guy on the side of the family who I want to talk a little bit more. So this really pushed me out into the world. So this other guy we had in the family traveled up the entire Nile all by himself, the Nile River, in a small boat. And nobody, I think, has ever done this, or at least until then, nobody had done it alone. And I only found out about him about 2 or 3 years ago when they did a documentary on him. And so this explains a little bit where this adventure spirit comes from. And also my dad really loved to do tours in the mountains, summer or winter. It didn't matter, right? So I guess that's where I got some of that spirit. So my life has, in fact, been very adventurous and in very different ways though than theirs, right? So I moved to Munich at age 19, from there to Spain, and later to other continents like Latin America, Brazil, and Argentina and Latin America, and also to the US, where I've lived in both San Francisco and New York City, and also spent some time in Miami and other places. And then lately, in the last few years, I've spent also a total of 6 months in 5 African countries, which has been an extremely enriching experience. And of course, I've traveled elsewhere too, because I love to travel, right? So when I tell my stories, sometimes people ask me to write a book about them. And, maybe someday I will. So I'll have to find the time for it, though. I've written a different book, but not this one yet.
Yeah, wonderful. So I can think of so many young people as, when you're planning your life, you say, oh, well, I want to have this job where I can travel the world. There's so many people have that. But then when it comes right down to it, we go to college, we come out, and in my case, I went into medicine, or you went into law, or you opened a business, and that travel just never happens. And so we see someone like you and we go, oh, she had the dream life. She got to travel and just learn all these things. So how did you actually start out with that? What profession did you start out with? How did you have that opportunity to be able to go from country to country?
Yeah, so I studied to be a translator and interpreter, and I've always, done translations on the side and all of that, but it was never my main profession. When I was at the age of just when I finished my studies, it was very different to nowadays. We didn't have the internet yet, and it just was starting, right? And I was not really well informed about my possibilities. What I did very strategically, I have to say, although I didn't know a lot about the firm, is I joined a global consulting firm, the Boston Consulting Group. And I stayed with them for 2 years in Munich. And all of a sudden, there was an opportunity to move to Madrid, Spain. I didn't speak any Spanish, but a colleague of mine said, well, you can learn that. And at the time, it wasn't like you can just learn a language right away. We were used to the concept that you learn a language at school or you study it at university. So there was a little bit of a mindset shift, but I did. And a few months later, I found myself in Madrid, Spain. And then only 10 months later, I was offered a promotion to head of office, to anything that was not consulting staff. So that was, of course, a big step, especially as I just learned the language and just moved to a new country. And of course, it was not without a challenge either, because it always requires some sense of adaptation. It was a completely different culture. I'd actually never been to Spain before, except for a very short interview. Mm-hmm. And then, later it went on to to stories that are quite adventurous. For example, in 2005, so I in between, I'd moved several times, right? And from Spain, I spent 7 years in Spain, did a lot of work in Portugal. Then I moved back to Germany for about 2 years. Actually, before that, I also spent a half year in Brazil, then moved back to Germany and did some European projects. But I was always with one foot outside of Germany. I was never really there. So then I moved to Argentina for a bit, the crisis hit, and then California was next, San Francisco, back with BCG, which I had left in between. And after some time in San Francisco, 3.5 years or so, I decided to really leave my job in San Francisco behind and pack a dream into my pockets and move to Argentina, right? So I didn't always really move with a job, in the beginning, yes, but not always. And sometimes I just moved to another country with a dream. And this was in 2005. I wanted to open a bed and breakfast in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I found a house for it actually pretty quickly, but paying for it was a bit more adventurous than I first thought, to say the least. You had to pay in cash and in dollars, right? And so I didn't have a car and was not recommended to take a taxi from bank to bank. It was very risky. You could have been observed, but not. So I found myself carrying several $100,000 across the city in my socks, from one bank to the other. All my savings in my socks on a hot summer day when it was not a time for socks at all, for jeans. But I didn't have a choice. So the money made it safely, gladly. And lots of other stories and adventures followed. But, these are the times when we need to somehow decide, do we want to do this? Do we, sometimes we got to take a risk, And this was that story. And it all went well. The bed and breakfast was actually number one on TripAdvisor during the entire time it was open, because I provided excellent customer service and did it all a bit differently to some of the other bed and breakfasts. And there were 45 at the time, because it was high season for tourism in Argentina, unlike now, because everything has changed quite a bit. Yeah, but that was that story. Wow. So there's a lot of lessons in all of those experiences, Kimberly, because we sometimes think it's unrelated to what we do now, but it's not really. I had to deal with a lot of challenges as a business owner in Argentina and later in Brazil as well. And one of it was corruption. Yeah, so I was somebody, and I am somebody for who integrity is very high on the list. And that's why I never gave in to corruption attempts, which was really challenging because I had an investor's visa, and as such, I had to open a business within a year and employ somebody, which I actually managed to do. I did the build out, which in itself was at times pretty strenuous, but I made it all work within a year. And I opened it, I even had guests within a year, but they don't give you the license within a year. So it's like, the cat, who bites its tail? I can't remember.
I think the dog that chases its tail.
Right. But I have so many dogs around me here, so I'm so dog focused. But anyway, so it's funny, but at the time, that was stressful at times, and so because I never gave up into those attempts, the city of Buenos Aires tried to fine me, but I contested the fine and I actually won a lawsuit against the city of Buenos Aires because I was lucky enough to have a non-corrupt judge. So that was awesome.
Wow. So when I'm thinking about you, even in the beginning, moving to Madrid or being in San Francisco and then just picking up, and I'm guessing you didn't have a house in mind when you went there. You just picked up, went to Argentina and started looking for a house to start this dream. What did you do to help yourself be that bold, to be that brave, to move forward into the unknown? So many people are worried about moving into the unknown and they just won't move. They'll stay where they're comfortable or safe or feel okay.
I think there was a time in my life when I just did it. Just like Spain, I did not know whether I'd like Spain. I hadn't been there except for this very short interview. And what's really funny is that on that one visit, I was robbed. It was just some money out of my, but I was pickpocketed. It was not the greatest start, but I said, no, I want to do this, right? This is my opportunity to move abroad because I wanted to go at first to an English speaking country. I had tried the US and all of that, but it wasn't working out right away. And even somebody had told me about, BCG is about to do a merger in Australia, and maybe that's an opportunity for you. But I was not ready to wait anymore. I was getting impatient, right? So I said, okay, this is my chance. And it catapulted me somehow into the Latin American arena as well later on, right? Because this is what was my stepping stone into Latin America, where I moved later. Mm-hmm. And this was also a great opportunity to learn Portuguese, because I was working so much with Portugal. We opened an office in Portugal pretty soon after I arrived in Madrid. And I was also in charge of that office. So I was traveling back and forth weekly for several years.
Mm-hmm. And how do you know when it's time to go? So, you're totally invested in the project you're working on, mm-hmm. But then it's like, does Regina just say, okay, I'm getting restless, next adventure? Or
it might be part of that. I'm definitely a movement person. I love dance, and we can talk a little bit about that later maybe, but I love to walk. I love to ride my bike. I love to travel. I love to move. And moving is always also at the same time an effort. It's more convenient to stay put, of course, but I do get a little restless sometimes. And I've also found that my life has been pretty much working in 3.5 and 7 year blocks. I spent 7 years in Munich at first. I spent 7 years in Spain, and it was 3.5 years here, 3.5 years there. it was really interesting to observe that in hindsight.
Mhm.
And I noticed that when it came to the 7 years in New York City, I started to get a bit antsy. Although I had been traveling so much all the time, because I had spent 1 or 2 months in Africa most of the winters, or in the beginning, I was still going back and forth to Brazil to clean up some of the mess that I had left there with a business that I had to close because of fraudulent business partner. And if there's time, we can talk a little bit about that. But you know, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but it's all been such enriching experiences. And I think that have shaped me into who I am today, given me a lot of knowledge about other cultures, allowing me to speak other languages. And it's a life that if I could go back, you know, I might make it a bit more comfortable times, but I think it all makes sense, and I was always where I was supposed to be.
Wonderful. So let's talk about dance. Because
Sorry?
Let's talk about dance, because I think movement is so important, and it's a basis of what I do and what I train people to do. Because without movement, we don't learn. It's just really unhealthy to just sit and do nothing. So talk about dance and how it has enhanced your life.
Yes, dance right now also keeps me sane sometimes, because there's so much going on in the world and it's hard to know what to make of it sometimes for so many people. I do a lot of research, so sometimes that can also get to me. I have to also have that other piece. And of course, I have my spiritual practice, so I know what spiritually is behind it, or I think to know. And yeah, but dance has taught me so many precious lessons. There's really a plethora of lessons that I learned from dance. And I even wrote a blog about it, which you can find on my website, transformyourperformance.com. It's on the blog page. So I want to highlight maybe a few lessons that I have learned, and then our listeners can read up on the rest, because I think it will also inspire all of the listeners to reflect on what they might have learned through their hobbies or their passions, which might not seem directly related to their business or to their career. Yes. So dance isn't something that I studied as a girl. I grew up in a small village. And it showed up for me later in life. But I do remember that as a little girl, I avidly watched anything dance on TV. So there wasn't that much. So one thing I've learned through dance is definitely confidence. As I mentioned earlier, I was extremely shy as a little girl. So you have to develop a certain level of confidence to express yourself through dance. Yeah, whether it's dancing on your own or with a partner, it doesn't matter. And many of us have probably experienced that in a club, even though you might not practice dancing otherwise, right? That it takes courage to go onto the dance floor and move in front of other people, right?
It does.
And then also related to this confidence is also to make the ask. Yeah, whether you are in a corporate career or in a financial services firm, whatever your situation is, or business owner, you have to make an ask sometimes. Yeah, for what you want, what you need, or an ask for a sale. So if you want to dance with great dancers, especially while you're not that great yet yourself, you sometimes gotta ask somebody to dance, right? That can be scary because you might get a no, just like in business.
Yeah.
And you know, when we make an offer, for example, or when you apply for a job, we could get a no, but we must learn to do it anyway, because eventually it will be a yes. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's going to be more yeses over time, just like in dance. And then it also, of course, taught me nonverbal communication, so important for any type of work. In dance, you express yourself through your body and through your energy. And in partner dance, you also communicate through body and energy. That's how you pick up the cues and signs from the leader as a follower, for example, right? And in business also, what's important is presence. There's so much we can take from dance and bring it into our business presence, our speaking presence, from our posture to how we use our energy, all of that. And I think one last one that I really want to mention is also teamwork. And there's many, many more lessons. Okay, there's leadership lessons, all of that. But in a dance ensemble, and I've never danced professionally but I've participated in a few performances in a group. So and we did some aerial movements and stuff, right? You don't see that now in me, but I did some crazy stuff like that in Brazil. So when you're in that situation, the dancers really have to build on each other's strengths. So we must be able to rely on each other, just like in a team, to trust each other to an extent that our lives can sometimes depend on it. We must trust that somebody catches us in acrobatic moves, or so that we don't fall. And as I said, there's a lot more, but I'm gonna leave it here as a start.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that was really, really inspiring. So I was looking here because I was trying to remember the name of your system, Powerful Leadership Transformation. Why don't you talk about that? Because that is your signature.
Of course. Thank you, Kimberly. So it's my signature coaching framework, Powerful Leadership Transformation, or PLT, and it's built on 4 pillars. So the 4 pillars are a self-empowering mindset and heart set. That's the first pillar. Number 2 is distinctive uniqueness. And number 3 is a body and energy conscious presence. And then we have number 4, inspired and effective action, which is really almost a result of the other 3. But of course, we also have to take action for things to happen, for the results to happen that we want. And these 4 pillars, together with another modality that I use a lot in my coaching and training practice, which is called conversational intelligence, which is not my IP, but I've studied it and I'm certified in it. So conversational intelligence gives us the verbal components and some very, very effective tools to navigate successfully through team conversations, negotiations, etc. So it's complementary to my framework, Powerful Leadership Transformation. Wow. And then it's also important, I had mindset in the beginning, only like as the first pillar, self-empowering mindset, but later I added on the heart set.
I think the heart is really important, probably more important even than the mindset. So I think the heart guides and leads your mind.
Yeah, I love that. Mindset work is important, right? But even if we do very profound mindset work, which works really with this subconscious mind, because as you might have heard, at least 95% of our behavior is driven through our subconscious, right? So even if we do this work, we will miss out if we don't also consider our heart set. I call it heart set. And we miss out on at least 50% of our intelligence, and more importantly, of our very unique wisdom, because that's what our heart holds. It holds a very special intelligence and wisdom that is unique to us and to our life path. And I have found that the best decisions are made with our hearts. At least for me, that's proven true. Because that's where we most easily access our intuition. Of course, also with the pineal gland, third eye, and so on. But our heart is that other place where we can really tap into our intuition easily, and our intuition knows what's right for us. Yeah, so due diligence is important when we make decisions. I'm not gonna dismiss it, but the magic happens when you combine due diligence with the wisdom of your heart. And the truth is, you cannot rationalize everything. That's also why other people don't have the solution for you usually, because your heart holds your specific wisdom for you. And then also what I found is that our heart is a source of courage. In fact, in many languages, and I'm a language freak, I love languages, so I've studied this a little bit. The words heart and courage have the same root in many, many languages. Yeah. So I like to say fear is in the mind, but courage is in the heart.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. There's so much more to it. Like also our heart holds our creative power. It picks up inspiration from the field because it's like a magnet. Its electromagnetic field is so much stronger than our head brain's field. In fact, that's been measured, right? And the heart's electrical field is 100 times as strong as the brain's electrical field, and the magnetic field of the heart can even be up to 5,000 times stronger. So this is a lot. And it means that to a very large extent, our connection with the world around us happens through our hearts. It's like a magnet with that strong magnetic frequency that it emanates, and it continuously sends out magnetic signals or waves, right, so to speak. And this is also why it has such an important and magical role when it comes to manifesting what we want.
That makes total sense. And I've just never thought of it the way you're describing it. So thank you for just illuminating that.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. You know, there's a Heart Math Institute. They do a lot of research, and that's where we get our numbers from for the most part, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you work with people, are you working with them one-on-one? Or are you working with them in groups? And if someone did want to work with you, what would they expect to happen? Like, what are you helping them with?
Yes, I do one-on-one coaching. I have been working mostly with women in organizations. And because I'm in New York, most of my clients have been women in financial services or mid-tier financial services. I've also worked with entrepreneurs and women in other industries and some men, not excluding anybody. And this work is valuable for anybody really. But it's just happened to be that because I am based in New York City, and there's a lot of financial services firms, right? So the way and then of course I also do trainings, and I do a lot of speaking, you know, at events for companies and so on, and at conferences. But when I work with women or with clients in one-on-one, we usually work for a period of at least 3 months, because that's how I have found my clients get the most results. There are also some other more specific programs that I offer, you know, that are more tailored for a very specific punctual or temporary purpose. We can also do that though. So women in finance are usually very analytical, and I know that they need the skill for their job, so it's really important. But when we use only or mostly our analytical and rational skills so much, that sometimes comes at the expense of talents and abilities we have been given, like intuition, right? And we don't use it so much anymore. And so it's like that muscle that we are not using, and it's becoming smaller. And of course, not talking for all financial women, but you know, this is something that I have observed sometimes, and every individual is still different. But it's something that I think is very useful for a lot of people. It's this human thing that what we don't use enough becomes you know, a little bit neglected, just like a language. If we don't use a language enough, it's no longer as active. Let's put it this way. But it's still there, and you can still re-energize it, and you can revive it. Yeah, and so it's really important for us all to re-energize our intuitive abilities and our dreams, and to open up our minds to new possibilities and new opportunities that we might not currently see or even imagine. Yeah, and that we can do that by working with our subconscious mind and with our heart set, and with our, you know, we can change our subconscious filters and therefore see possibilities that we might not have otherwise seen. And we can reawaken the dreamer in us. I think that's so important. Yes. The powerful woman that can co-create her dreams and her vision, and maybe write a new vision for herself, one that's more aligned with her passions and her purpose. And that can absolutely happen within the current career. And then some might decide to change it, but to move outside of their current careers, but that does not necessarily have to happen in order for you to have a fulfilled life and to make an impact. And we also work on business presence, on increasing visibility through what I mentioned before, body and energy conscious presence, using energy more consciously. Because as you know, Kimberly, even on your show right now, we always constantly communicate on an energetic level all the time with each other. So why not do it more consciously, right? And really benefit from it as well, right? And the other important piece here is for us to be really fully aware of our unique brilliance. And this is what I call our distinctive uniqueness, to know our value and to own our value. So with my clients, I go really deep with this because it's key for getting what they want, to be seen and heard and recognized, for their brilliance, compensated for it. And women, I have found, also men, of course, but I mostly work with women, so I talk a lot about women, but they want to make an impact. You can do that much better when you're seen and promoted into a role where you have greater reach and greater influence. And I would say, real success for most women is success when it's combined with impact, and that leads to a more fulfilled career in life. I think we, as entrepreneurs, we know that too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so they can reach me, of course, through my website. I have two websites, actually. One is my main website where everything is explained, transformyourperformance.com. And the other one is my connection website, followregina.com, where you can also sign up for my updates. I share a lot of tools, a weekly tool for free, and lots of juicy stuff. And and then currently I have a couple of specials which are online, but actually, we can maybe put do you think we can put the links?
We're putting the link in the show notes.
Yeah. Okay, then it makes sense to offer those. So one is, they both are offered online, but one is done actually with me in person. So it is I'm just looking here on my computer for the exact title so I can read that for you. So it is called Extend Your Time and Get More Value Out of Your Day. And it's a one-on-one coaching session, and it has a very special rate of $497. I'll give you the link for that. You can also find it on followregina.com, but it's probably the easiest with the link. And this is really a super cool one-on-one coaching session where in one session I'll help you magically extend your time with an approach that adapted to your very specific situation and will provide you also with a strategic tool for priority setting. And if you simply want to reduce your stress, you can also download From Stress to Calm in 17 minutes, and that's only $27. So we can put up the link as well. This stuff really works, and you can use it anytime you want. Yeah, you can repeat it anytime you want. And if 17 minutes is still too much for you, you can split it up into 2 sessions, because it's actually 2 sessions. And by the way, these 2 sessions also have a lasting effect, not just a temporary effect. That's how it's set up. Yeah. So these are 2 things. And would you like me to share anything else about maybe advice?
Actually, I wanted to ask you a personal question.
Okay.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life right now?
The most happiness. Okay. So I think for me, it's I'm always trying to make time for dance. my dance classes are not happening right now. I used to do a lot of dance classes, like which at the same time were my fitness. So it's very intense dance classes, like house dance, like Afrobeat and Dombolo dancing. And Dombolo is a Congolese dance, which I love, and I love the music for it. So I'm still doing that. I also go to dance events. I'm currently going back and forth between Miami and New York City. Here in Miami, there have been dance events, since January or so. So I've been going to those, mostly Kizomba, which is Angolan. Kizomba and Samba is Angolan dancing, partner dancing. And yeah, and my almost daily bike rides. And, of course, also connecting with people who I can talk to about what's going on in the world, to really have a deep understanding of it. I think it's also a really important part of it, even though they might not be next to me physically.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for sharing all your insights. I loved what you were talking about, the heart and just, standing out and, owning your value. Just wonderful, wonderful things you were sharing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Kimberly, for having me. And about this, distinctive uniqueness, one thing that I wanted to leave here as well for our audiences: if you don't have a role model, don't worry. You don't need one. Your life is unique to you, and only you can walk on your unique path. So that's really, really important. And the other thing is, never sacrifice your freedom for safety, because as many have said before me, if you do, both go away. So really live your freedom. Do anything it takes to be in freedom.
All right. Thank you so much, Regina.
Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to everybody watching and listening. I appreciate you all.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon.